Hi, I'm Charles Phoenix, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guild. Architect Edward Killingsworth came to fame through the design of many of the famous case study houses back in the day, and his practice grew, building hotels and resorts around the world. Today's guest, architect Sutherlin McLeod, knew Killingsworth during the last years of his life, and she also now owns his former office, which has been brilliantly restored. Kelly has also restored a lot of mid-century modernist houses, and she can help you with those gut-wrenching, life-altering decisions like whether or not to keep or replace your bright purple sink. Later on, we welcome musical guest Laura Windley and her swinging Mint Julep Jazz Band. And now, the former owner of a bright purple sink himself, your host, George Smart.
Hey, thanks, Tom. There is quite a dilemma for new owners of classic mid-century modernist houses. Let's say you buy one, and it's relatively unchanged since 1954. After you clear out the items which are damaged beyond repair, which are going to be few, you're typically going to start asking advice from friends, architects, decorators, your cousin Earl, and other owners of mid-century modernist houses. And what you'll quickly discover is that there are two schools of thought. Two schools, like football teams from intensely rival towns, that both have strong opinions. One team is laid back, and the other quite righteous. Let's go down to the field and meet our teams. Tom?
All right. With a spotty record and no coach, but decades-long sponsorship from Home Depot, the property rights Wildcats pretty much invent every strategy right before it's game time. They insist that everything is a matter of taste, and that, most importantly, no one should tell them what to do.
Oh, no.
Even if they're right. Team huddles are all about personal choice, discount cards, and massive sub-zero fridges. On the plus side, the Wildcats tend to win games more quickly and with less money, but the quality of play varies and some games are brutal defeats, like the time someone turned a gorgeous John Lautner modernist into an Italianate villa. Most of the media ignores the Wildcats unless a celebrity comes on their team, and then they're on the cover of Architectural Digest.
And on the other side of the field, the modernist Saints have 90 years of precedent to follow. With many famous all-stars like Frank Lloyd Wright, Richard Neutra, and Mies van der Rohe, everything has to be just like it was when the game was new. If you're going to replace something, it has to be like the original. The Saints win almost every game, but there are a few new plays. It takes twice as long, and the cost can be crazy. The media loves the Saints. They can't get enough of the new players and coaches, and they are quick to criticize the Wildcats for not respecting the game. So what do you do with your new mid-century home? Do you just buy what you want, what you can afford, or do you take it back in time? There's no correct answer. Like a grandfather who cannot say which of two beautiful grandkids he likes more, I don't have a preference. Just keep in mind that, like everything, there's a life cycle to modernist ownership. The person who buys the house, let's say they're a Wildcat, as long as they don't destroy the place, that's perfectly okay, because in 10 to 15 years, a Saint will come along. The point is, let's agree on all saving the houses, keeping them basically intact, so whatever game is played, ultimately we all win.
Yay!
That's what it's all about, right?
Yep.
And that bright purple sink? It was in my parents' house, and I lobbied hard as a child to keep it in place. I mean, how many purple sinks do you actually get to see? As it was in the guest room, and we didn't have many guests, they kept it. But it's gone now, sadly, and I've never seen one since. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs, and by modernist realtor Angela Roll.
In a timeless adventure that we are completely making up, realtor Angela Roll grew up in Estonia, the daughter of a former ambassador wrongly accused of spying on next-door Lithuania. He was cleared, it turns out, because Estonia only has 6 spies, and everybody pretty much knows who they are. After a night of partying with Le Corbusier's cousin, Boozy Corbusier, Angela took the ferry across the Gulf to Finland, causing an international incident involving a little red dress, a wood-turning lathe, the Finnish Coast Guard, and a $2,400 bar tab she accidentally signed over to Bjork. Angela escaped the resulting media frenzy on a train to Denmark in the company of international man of mystery Eric of Aarhus, whom she later married. Angela then moved to North Carolina to become a real estate agent. Specializing in modernist houses, Angela advises buyers and sellers on everything, from appropriate renovation to shipping a wood-turning lathe from Helsinki. Reach her at angelaroll.com, that's ROEHL, or call 919-995-0550. Edward Killingsworth graduated from USC in 1940 and was the most prolific creator of case study houses, a project sponsored by Arts and Architecture magazine to provide affordable housing for returning World War II soldiers and their families. Killingsworth joined architects which included Richard Neutra, Charles and Ray Eames, Pierre Koenig, Rodney Walker, and the fast and furious Craig Elwood, designing 6 of the case study houses and winning 42 AIA awards. Killingsworth, who died in 2004, was campus architect for Cal State Long Beach for more than 40 years. He also designed many of the Port City's civic buildings, including City Hall, the main library, and the Long Beach Convention Center. He was also known for hotels and resorts in Hawaii, Guam, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Today's guest honeymooned in one of them, the Kapalua Bay Hotel in Maui, sadly destroyed in 2006.
Architect Kelly Sutherlin McLeod graduated in architecture from USC.
Go Trojans!
The first woman named by the architecture school as a distinguished alumni.
I hear over 600 people showed up for that awards dinner.
And the first woman Gamble House scholar in the iconic Green and Green House in Pasadena. In the 2000s, she would be back to design the Gamble House restoration. For over 34 years, her architecture firm in Long Beach has specialized in historic preservation projects, working on buildings by Neutra and Killingsworth, among others, and new projects as well. Welcome, Kelly.
Good morning, George. Thank you.
Kelly, tell us about your honeymoon, at least the architectural parts.
Well, little did I know the destination that we were headed to, but I distinctly recall walking into the Kapalua Bay Hotel and exclaiming, "Oh my goodness, who designed this building?" It was so beautiful, and we were lucky enough to not only honeymoon there, but then take our children back before it was demolished.
So how long ago was your honeymoon?
36 years ago.
Ooh, okay.
Okay. And what happened to the hotel? I mean, did they replace it with something else, or did it just fall apart?
The story I heard is that it was demolished and replaced so they could have a hotel closer to the road. When we went back the second trip and I asked why is the building being demolished, that's what I was told. But I honestly don't know beyond that.
There are some wonderful modernist hotels throughout Hawaii. I was particularly struck by the hotel called the Ilikai, which you might not know by name, but if you ever watched a Hawaii Five-0 show, either the old one with Jack Lord or the new one with Alex McLaughlin, there's that scene at the end of the opening credits where he whirls around from the balcony of a hotel. That's the Ilikai in Honolulu.
Okay.
And it is a fabulous hotel to stay in. It's still got all the charm it ever had.
Well, I'm working with a documentarian and filmmaker, Eric Bricker, who did the documentary on Julia Schulman, and he is currently working on a film about Killingsworth. So I am looking forward to spending some time at Kahala Hilton, which I've never been to, and really put Ed on the international map.
We know Eric Bricker very well. I've hung out with him in Palm Springs. He's been a guest on the show a couple times.
Me too.
Oh, I'm going to look for that podcast then.
Now, after your honeymoon, you eventually rented office space from Killingsworth while he was still around. What was he like?
He was wonderful. He was very generous with his knowledge. He was very supportive. He became a dear friend and a mentor. We met each other when I was new to Long Beach and had just started up my firm. And he was always very interested in what I was doing and asked me to work with him on the design of a new building at Cal State Long Beach. And that's how we really got to know one another. After his firm had closed, but he was still going into the office, he contacted me and asked me if I would consider renting the South Pavilion of the office.
So
and I did.
You were renting space long after you had met him.
Met him long before I rented the office space.
Before he became
I met
landlord.
him in the 80s, and I rented the office in 2002, I believe.
He gave you some great advice about marketing.
Well, I would guess that you're thinking about him saying to me, if you want to win over new clients, bring them to your own home.
Right.
Yes, and that actually did work.
Oh, good.
I need to thank him. I need to thank him for that. And he was very complimentary of my own home. It's a 1940s roll and coat home. And he knew how much I appreciated his building, the office building, and how much respect I had for him. And I treasure the memories I have of spending time with him and hearing his fabulous stories.
It really is easier, isn't it, with new clients if you just bring them over to your house and having to try to explain something in a conference room.
Exactly. I had one new client whose mother was an interior designer, and she wanted to come over and see my house. And after we toured, she said to her son and daughter-in-law, whatever Kelly says, I totally trust it. So that felt good.
There you go.
Wow.
That's the kind of client you want.
I mean, I guess you
Yes.
have to keep the house kind of picked up then, but that's a small price to pay for all that extra business.
Right. When you're the front of the house and the back of the house all at the same time.
And, Ed's sons will tell you that they left in the morning, every morning, having to have the house completely ready for a client visit.
Wow.
Now, my children did not go through that, but the sons of Ed Killingsworth did.
Now, Kelly, you went from renter to owner. You now own Ed's office.
Yes, that's correct, George.
And how has that restoration gone?
Well, it's an ongoing project. It's definitely a labor of love. And the building needed a lot of work. And Ed had stayed in that building for over 50 years and did not really do restoration work or much repair other than, let's get it done for the moment, and a lot of paint and patch. And it's high maintenance architecture. But again, like I said, it's labor of love.
Did he build the building? Is it new and he designed it?
No, he wanted to show his clients what he could do with his post and beam architecture, large expanses of glass. At the time, lending institutions weren't supporting residential projects with too much glass or with flat roofs.
They still aren't.
And so Ed wanted to demonstrate to his clients what he could do, and so he built this office building. And he had a partner in the structural engineering firm. I saw a letter or a communication that Ed wrote that apologetically stated that he went over budget and he spent $17,000 building the building. And it was about experimenting with materials, using new materials, pushing the properties of those materials. He wasn't thinking about the longevity necessarily. So I feel very honored to be the steward of the property.
And I guess you have to be the one now worried about things like longevity.
Yes, absolutely. But it's an honor to be in the building, and it's a lovely building and beautiful spaces. And so I feel very fortunate.
Do people drive by and take photos of it?
All the time.
I bet.
And Ed had hoped that the building would always be accessible to students and to architectural enthusiasts, and I try very hard to respect that wish of his. And so if I see someone out taking pictures, I will go out and talk with them and see where their interest is. And I have students tour the building, heritage conservation students tour on a regular basis. I open the doors to architectural groups. We've been part of Long Beach Architecture Week, of Society of Architectural Historians, and I feel it's very important. This was such a pivotal building in Ed's career before he did the case study work, and I truly want to honor Ed's wishes that the building be accessible.
Kelly, now that you're the steward of this office, have you thought about bringing in a young architect to rent a little space to?
We do a good job using all the space in the building. The building is 5,000 square feet, and it was originally designed as 3 pavilions for 3 separate entities, the Killingsworth firm being in the center pavilion, I call it. South Pavilion was occupied by the structural engineer who was partner in the building of the office. And then the north space was a rental space that was part of their financial plan to afford the building. And then within 10 years, Ed spread throughout the building. Now, the 3 pavilions were separated by interior gardens. And during the course of Ed's expansion, he filled in those interior garden spaces. And so the building's somewhat circuitous, but you can't tell from the front that those changes ever happened. And also inside, Ed did a brilliant job keeping the natural light coming in every space, beautiful vistas. The connection between the indoor and the outdoor was all preserved, even though he made those modifications to the building.
Now, about 12 years ago or so, you got involved with a Richard Neutra house, the Hafley house. How does a Neutra compare to a Killingsworth in terms of doing a restoration on it?
Many overlaps and parallels. The Neutra house, the Hafley house, was built in 1953 in Long Beach, and I'm certain Ed was aware of it. I'm sure he spent time down there at the Hafley house, and the office building was built in 1955. So similar materials. While Ed's was post and beam, and the Neutra house is not post and beam, they both have large expanses of glass, both have materials that were very common at the time, and affordable materials such as formica, masonite, fiberboard, exposed concrete. The Hafleys were on a very tight budget. Ed Killingsworth was on a very tight budget. But the materials, the use of materials, and the experimentation of building systems are quite parallel.
Now, a lot of people don't know that Long Beach, it just didn't show up there. It got created as a port, and it's a giant port.
Yes, it is. It really is, and you'll find people in Long Beach who don't realize just how large the port is and what a huge player it is in the international shipping business.
Don't they notice all of the container ships parked offshore? That's what we see on the news back here.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Long Beach is a very, very special city. I've been there since 1986 and raised my family there. My husband and I have raised our family there, and we both had our businesses there. And it's just been a great place to live and to work.
And the Queen Mary's still there, right?
Yes, it is.
They're trying to figure out how to keep that thing going. I know it has some structural problems, or it's sinking or taking on water or something like that.
Yeah, boats tend to do that.
Yeah.
The paper has a lot of bad news about the Queen Mary. And interesting, I just finished doing a documentation project with colleagues of mine at Wish Jenny Elsner, surveying the lifeboats on the Queen Mary and evaluating and documenting the original lifeboats versus the non-original. It was fascinating. All the times I've been on the Queen Mary, I've never been able to look at it in this way and up close and personal with the lifeboats.
Which might come in handy if it winds up sinking down there in the harbor.
Yeah, all staff to the lifeboats, please.
Right. That must have been neat.
It was fantastic. The preservation, heritage conservation is so interesting because every project is new. Every property, every resource has a story to tell if we're willing to listen to it. And it's all about the story and the learning, and I'm very passionate about the profession.
Now, you've worked on several green and green houses, particularly the Gamble House. Was that when Ted Bosley was there?
Yes, it was.
He's been a guest on the show.
Oh, okay. Well, these are podcasts that I need to look at. I've listened to many of your shows, but I guess I need to find all my friends that you've interviewed.
You probably know a lot of people that have been on here. And you were a scholar fellowship recipient for that, and then you came back years later and did a restoration, which is just amazing. I mean, the place looks fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it was the first comprehensive conservation of the building exterior. And while I was in architecture school, my last 2 senior years, I was selected to be scholar in residence. 2 students live in the house every year. And so I had the tremendous opportunity to live inside the house, and the conservation project allowed me to live outside the house, walking on scaffolding and up and close with every inch of the building exterior. It was a wonderful opportunity.
And the Gamble House, if I recall correctly, is very wood intensive, right?
Yes, all wood.
It's not like a Neutra or your office, which is more steel and glass.
Right. Very different. And the conservation of the Gamble House and the restoration projects of the mid-century modern, the approach was the same in terms of research and study and authenticity, honoring authenticity and conservation based, identifying what was original, what was the design intent, and sticking to that authenticity. However, with the Gamble House, with the natural materials, the Greens selected materials knowing that they would age and they would patina, and the patina is beautiful on those hand-split redwood shakes, on the exterior, it just has a warmth. We did not want to strip back for the building to look new. We did not want to strip away that history and restart an aging cycle. We wanted it to look like a well-taken care of 100-year-old house. And after we finished the project, there were comments, especially from lay people, that said, "What did you do?" And that was the biggest compliment that we could get. With the Halfley House and the Killingsworth office building, those buildings were designed to look pristine, machine-like, slick materials, and the process was the same, the period of significance, guiding the targeted aesthetic and retaining authenticity, honoring the authenticity and the original design intent of the architects. But Ed and Richard Neutra didn't design those buildings with age and patina in mind.
And the Gamble House became a movie. There was a documentary about 5 or 6 years ago.
The conservation project, yes. There was a documentary on the conservation, and then there was a lovely movie done by Don Hahn.
We had Lori Corngable on the show, I believe, about that same time at the New York Architecture and Design Film Festival.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Now, Kelly, with regard to potential clients right now, they're listening to this, what are some rookie mistakes that non-architects make when restoring a modernist house?
Ooh. Well, number one, not doing their research, not learning what it is that they have, what the original design intent was, what the original materials, a lot of assumptions can be made. That's very easy to do. So making assumptions is problematic. Automatically replacing because you think the materials are very commonplace. It's formica, it's fiberboard, it's veneered plywood.
Right. I can just go down to Home Depot and pick that up. And
right.
It'll be the same.
And it's not the same. And our modern resources were so close to this recent history, and we have a lot of documentation. We're in touch with the people who not only designed the buildings, but lived in them, worked in them. And with the Halfley House, for instance, we had the good fortune of having all of the construction documents, the design renderings, the specifications, communications between the client and the architect. And we could literally rebuild. We had enough information to rebuild the project, but that was a double-edged sword. Yes, we had all this wonderful information, but at what point are you reconstructing and not restoring? And I felt very strongly about that this was a house, even though it was modest in size. Neutra paid attention to the details. He was very involved during construction administration, making adjustments, eyes on the entire process. We didn't want to lose that authenticity of Neutra's hand being on this building.
Are there any materials that you just can't get anymore because they either don't exist or they're just wildly expensive in doing a restoration?
Many, many materials. And not only materials, but finishes, George, because of environmental quality concerns, rightfully so. But with the Gamble House, the Gambles loved using a material called malthoid. And even though it wasn't originally made with asbestos, as years went on, asbestos was added to it here in the United States.
It's called
And so
Malfoy?
Malthoid, Malthoid.
Okay.
Malthoid.
And not to be confused with Draco Malfoy of the Harry Potter movies. Okay.
No,
Just
no.
making sure.
Right. So they loved using it on roofs. It allowed them to get a very slight pitch to their roof slope, and it also allowed them to roll that beautiful rolled eave that you see at the Gamble House and minimize that eave line.
Mm-hmm.
And they also love to use it on walking surfaces. And even though the material failed within the first 10 years of the Gambles moving in, the Greens continued to use it throughout their career. And I have found it again and again and again on green and green buildings up through the 20s. So it's no longer made and not available. The more contemporary resources, it's interesting to me that materials that are familiar to me from my childhood experience and were familiar to my parents aren't familiar to my children's generation.
Like what?
Like fiberboard, like masonite,
Okay.
like homosote, used for insulation and acoustics. A green material, it's still made today, but if our children's generation isn't recognizing or is not familiar with these materials, that's only 2 generations. So if we make these rash assumptions that these materials are replaceable, they're going to be gone and obsolete.
Are they still making that fiberglass insulation that was so awful to install?
Which one are you talking
the
about?
blown fiberglass?
Yeah, that
the
blown
blown-in?
little fibers. It was like cotton candy. Always make your hands feel terrible.
Yeah, I think that's still around.
I think that's still around. They should need to get rid of that and come up with something
They really
better.
do. They really do. And the poor utility installer that has to run wires and piping through that horrible stuff.
Yep.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I like seeing those guys that do the spray foam insulation coming in their jetpacks and hoses. And
It's fascinating to watch. It
with a
really
big
is.
tanker truck out front, and they're just zipping it into all the cracks and crevices? Cracks and crevices.
Nooks and crannies. we'll
Nooks
say.
and crannies. That's it. Well, what projects are you working on these days? Is there a new restoration in progress, or are you doing mostly new houses?
We are doing a mixture of new construction as well as restoration. I'm working on a Harry Gensler home designed in the 1960s, I believe, doing a master restoration plan on that, which is fascinating. Harry is in his 90s, and I was able to see him speak at Iconic Houses. Oh, God, what's it called?
IconicHouses.org. Sure.
Right. Natasha's group.
Natasha Drabe, yep.
She had a wonderful conference in Los Angeles, and at the closing reception, she had Harry come and speak in the house, which was fascinating. And I haven't been able to interview him, but we have sent questions, and I'm waiting for the questions to come back.
And you've got some new projects going, too.
Yes. We're working on the design for a new cultural education center for the Japanese garden in San Diego, and working with landscape architect Keiji Yosugi, who I know from working at the Huntington, and worked with Keiji and his father, Takeo, many years ago. And they brought us in to work on this new building, and we're having a wonderful time with it. The garden is so beautiful, and we're designing the building as very much part of the garden.
So, Kelly, I know you've thought about this. So how do you assure that your office building, the Killingsworth project, doesn't get torn down years from now? How do you make sure that that sticks around?
Well, there are safeguards that you can put in place. And the first thing I did when I acquired the property was have it listed on the National Register.
Uh-huh.
It was already a local landmark, but I felt very strongly that it needed to be on the National Register. But unfortunately, there are no absolutes, and I will do everything I can to make sure that the building remains in the right hands. I know my children very much respect the building, respect the architecture. They knew Ed. So it means a lot to my family, and where it goes after my stewardship, I haven't resolved that yet, but definitely will do my best to keep it protected. And working on the Killingsworth office building, I came across a letter from the city of Long Beach trying to convince Ed to have the building listed as a local landmark. And reading the letter really struck me of the way we think about our designations and how possibly we need to rethink it with our modern resources. The letter was saying to Ed, It's only the exterior. You can do whatever you want in the interior. And trying to get him on board, he was a little hesitant. He did go ahead with the listing. But with this building, with the Neutra building, if you did anything you wanted with the interior, you would destroy the character-defining features of the indoor-outdoor. You would destroy the integrity of the building. And too many of our designations are exterior only. And I feel very strongly that especially when you have these large expanses of glass and the interior is so visible from the exterior and vice versa, that we need to think about the building comprehensively.
Have you thought about a preservation easement for the building?
I have considered that, and I would definitely be very open to that.
Because that seems in most jurisdictions to be the only thing that has any legal enforcement power.
Right, and ongoing, and changes with ownership.
With every owner. Yeah.
Right. So, no, absolutely, I would consider that. Again, the building as a whole, Ed left the building with its furnishings, some of which he designed, the Julius Schulman photographs that he used as marketing materials early in his career, early in Julius's career. They were still hanging on the walls. The fixtures, the landscape. Esther McCoy wrote about how important the tree was in Ed's architecture, and he designed this building around majestic oak trees, which unfortunately were gone by the time I met the building. But to think about all of this and how it works together, so the property as a whole, I feel very strongly that it needs to be preserved.
Well, thank you for taking care of this building as well as you have. It really is wonderful.
Well, I feel very fortunate to get to be the steward of the building and get to enjoy it on a daily basis. And, in having known Ed, I think about him every time I walk across those stepping stones in the reflecting pond and open that big, tall door.
And then peek out the window to see if there's somebody out there taking a picture.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's right. Do you ever get to Long Beach, George?
Occasionally.
Well, please let me know. I would love to host you for a tour of the building.
I would love to see it. Thank you for joining us, Kelly.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Tom. My pleasure.
Laura Windley is a jazz, swing, and big band vocalist and DJ based in Durham, North Carolina. She's a founding member, with husband Lucian Cobb, of the Mint Julep Jazz Band, an 8-piece swing band that's been called vintage that's always fresh. Yum. Laura has performed all over the country, from L.A. to Austin to Lincoln Center in New York. She and the band regularly participate in Lindy Hop and Balboa events. Those are dances, by the way. And Laura is the primary contributor to the Lindy Shopper, a website devoted to swing dance clothing and accessories. Welcome, Laura.
Hello. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in the studio. Because of COVID, we haven't had many live guests lately.
I can imagine. Well, it's delightful to be in person and sitting across from someone to
real
actually
person.
Connect as opposed to being on Zoom.
Well, before we get started, you're a family lawyer, too.
Yes.
Do you ever sit in a conference room at a settlement meeting and break in a song, something like, "You're sleeping with my client's sister, Mr. Jones"?
No, I try not to bring that up unless the client brings it up.
Uh-huh.
And it's always funny because they kind of look at you funny. Like maybe you're in a mediation, because we don't really spend a lot of time with our clients like in person necessarily, unless we're litigating a lot or we're in a mediation. And mediation is like at least 8 hours with your client. And they are like, "So I saw you on the internet," or "Do you have another job?" And I say, "Yes, I do have another job, and I know exactly what you have seen." And then we begin talking about my other career.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful.
Yes.
Now, you started out as a swing dancer and then a DJ and then a vocalist. How was that transition?
I would say it was pretty natural. I mean, I was head over heels for swing dancing starting in high school. And then, you start collecting the music, and my granddad was into trad jazz and swing. And so I kind of already knew a little bit about what we were supposed to be dancing to. And then you just start collecting music, and then you have access to university library. And then all of a sudden, let's form a swing dance club. And who has the most CDs? It's you, Laura. So you're the DJ. And then it just grows from there. Somebody hears that you're a good DJ. And so then you go to this was at East Carolina University. You go to the big dance, I'm using air quotes, in Raleigh, in the city, and then you just go from there. Then you're DJing regional events, then you're DJing national events.
So what's the secret to being a good DJ?
Well, the secret to being a good DJ, at least a swing DJ, is knowing your audience. Uh-huh. And every swing audience is different depending on the type of dances, the skill level, just the sort of flavor of the event. Like you're not going to DJ the same music at a late night that you're going to DJ for an afternoon dance. And then obviously knowing your music really well. And then, once you've DJ'd for a while, you can kind of personalize it because there are certain sets that are like, oh, the song reminds me of you, Laura. Not even just me singing, but something that I would DJ. And that lends itself to like female vocalists, sort of whimsical tunes, and trombone solos, of course, because my husband plays trombone. So yes, that's what I would say makes a good DJ. I mean, there are so many other things, from the audio side of things as well, paying attention. Yeah, it's a whole package. So then after I was DJing for probably 8 years, you live with this music. You're constantly, okay, what's the next gig? And you're preparing and you're immersed in it. Like 90% of my music consumption was swing music as opposed to like pop or whatever's on the radio. And I don't know, you just become a part of that world, and then you kind of sing in the shower, you sing in the car, and then you go to a rehearsal with your husband.
Now, did you meet him dancing or in a courtroom? I mean, I'm thinking it's one or the other.
Oh, gosh. I met Lucian in college. I think the first time I said a word to him was at a ska show. And I had a friend who had a crush on him who was a French horn player. And then I saw him at the ska show. And then I was organizing a jazz concert series for the student union at East Carolina. And he would play at the concert series. And then there was the Billy Taylor Jazz Festival. And then there was an after party. And I kind of knew all of these cats at that point. But I hadn't said much to Lucian. And I thought, I wish he would come and sit next to me at this party. And then he did.
And you willed him over.
I did.
This next song sounds like it's from the 30s, but it's actually fresh from the 21st century. Written just a few years ago by Keenan McKenzie with Laura on vocals. Here's The Dwindling Light of the Sea.
Strolling across the sand, we're so happy, hand in hand. Think how charming it would be in the dwindling light by the sea. Darling, if I may, take us dancing by the bay. Picture you so close to me in the dwindling light by the sea. Our favorite tune, and you smile, and I swoon. The sun dips below the sky, a breeze rolls in with a gentle sigh, watching golden waves till one of us misbehaves. Nothing sounds as fine to me as the dwindling light by the sea. my side. I could search both far and wide, but nothing sounds as fine to me as the dwindling light by the sea, as the dwindling light by the sea.
That's fabulous.
Oh, thank you. I will say I've recorded this a couple of times. So this is from my album Battle Axe. It's Ben Lassiter on guitar, Jason Foreman on bass, Aaron Tucker on drums, Keenan McKenzie on reeds, Aaron Hill on reeds, Paul Rogers on trumpet, and Lucian Cobb on trombone.
Besides music, you're also passionate about swing-focused clothing and accessories, which you appear to be wearing right now. And you have a blog called The Lindy Shopper. What's that all about?
Well, I have always had an interest in, let's say, dressing up. Even when I was a child, I love costumes. And when I saw people swing dancing in the late 90s when I was in high school, I thought, well, I want to do this, but I also want to look like this. And my mom took me vintage shopping. She was a history teacher, and so she kind of knew a little bit about historic clothing, and she helped me get started. And then I just sort of adopted that look when I was swing dancing. And then eventually, people would say, oh, where did you get this thing? And I said, oh, it's really easy. You just go to this website, or I got this here. And someone said, you should just start a blog, and you should call it Lindy Shopper. Like, I did not even conceive of this blog. Someone else, actually Cliff Dyer, came up with the name at just, one of our weekly dances. And then I started blogging, and then it just became this whole animal that I had no idea that people were hungry for these resources. And it's been kind of great watching essentially the online retail market grow from just a few offerings when I started blogging to, there are like multiple brands catering to this like specific audience and genre of clothing. And so it's been remarkable to...
So are you like a little Amazon? Can people buy the items from you? Or
No. Although I do have people message me like telling me that they would like to buy this thing. And I said, no, you have to go to the blog post and click on the link, and it takes you to the store that I'm talking about.
When is your own line of dresses coming out for swing?
Lord. I don't know. That's another question people have asked. Actually manufacturing clothing just seems like a daunting task to me. But I will say that let's just say I have plans in the works to start a fabric company.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, we can't wait to hear about that.
Yes.
You going to have some men's items in there?
Yes. Actually, the fabric is a reproduction of what was a popular men's suiting fabric.
Okay.
From the 1920s and 30s.
Like the zoot suit kind of fabrics?
No, it's a summer weight.
A summer weight?
Yeah.
Does it have a name?
Yes, it does. Well, we're not obviously like taking this trademark because it is still.
All right, yeah.
But the patent on the fabric has most likely expired at this point. But it was Palm Beach fabric. And so that is with a friend, Glenn Kreitzer, and some other, we'll call them investors,
yes.
who are very much interested in acquiring this sort of fabric. And so we'll see where it goes. We're just going to do a short run to begin with. And then, I don't know.
Well, please keep me informed, because that's something exactly that I would buy.
Fantastic.
Miami Boulevard is a real road in Durham.
Absolutely.
It's a string of gas stations and strip malls and nondescript offices.
It was also the site of the first McDonald's in Durham.
Really? Miami Boulevard is a little Houston as far as zoning goes, which is to stay zero. It's also been the home for at least 25 years of Jim Wilfong's Tiny Dance Hall in the woods, a nondescript building behind a nondescript house. But on every weekend night, pretty much, it lights up with swing, Lindy, East Coast, West Coast, and Zydeco dancing. Very special place. Here's Laura and the band with Miami Boulevard. so cool.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, this is all, both of these original tunes were written by my tenor player, Keenan McKenzie, who is just incredible. Just, who sort of comes to rehearsal and he's like, here, I wrote a tune. And it's just, it's so fitting for the band and the idiom.
It's happy.
And happy, yes. And danceable and everybody, yeah.
So swing dancing never really goes away. It just has different surges. I can remember like in the 90s, there was a movie Swing Kids.
Yes.
Right? And there was that great song by Janice Siegel, who's been a guest on the show, Bermuda Mr. Shane, right? Is that still played a lot at dances?
I would say that particular recording is sort of reserved for nostalgia nights.
Okay.
But by Mir itself, in all of its iterations, is, Andrews Sisters, Ella Fitzgerald, anyone who has covered that tune, those are definitely still played, and it's still a very popular tune.
So where can people go if they're interested in learning swing dance for the first time? What are some good resources for them?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think the best place to start is the Frankie Manning Foundation website. And through that website, you can get a lot of information about the history of swing dancing and the sort of, the old timers who originated this. And really, YouTube is a resource. I mean, when I was a whippersnapper, we didn't have YouTube. I just had to wait for swing dancing to show up.
Really, there was a time before YouTube?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, we had VHS tapes.
The worst. And if you type in Lindy Hop in YouTube, usually you will get some really good hits. And that would be a great place to sort of start and get your feet wet. And then when you are looking for swing dancing locally, typically using the words Lindy Hop, if you type in swing dancing, you can get an array, because ballroom dancers claim swing dancing, West Coast swing dancers claim swing dancing, but they're not necessarily dancing to what I would consider, in my snobby way, the best swing music. And if you are looking for doing swing dancing in the way that it was done when it originated in the late 20s, 30s, and 40s, Lindy Hop is the key word. And that is kind of the key to open the gate to all of the vintage dances.
Their website is mintjulipjazzband.com. Thanks for joining us, Laura.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks so much for having me. This is delightful.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by our longtime sponsors and cheerleaders, Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs, and by Modernist Realtor Angela Roll. Okay, Tom, roll the credits.
U.S. Modernist Radio is produced at the massive Soundtracks Arena Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Coaches Michaela O'Connor-Abrams and Rebecca Laney run the offensive and defensive lines, with Carrie Cesarino and Kelly Policelli on special teams, along with Ron Gallagher, Trevor O'Donnell, Virginia Faust, and Catherine Kramer. Strength and conditioning, Frank Harmon. Media relations, Iva Kravitz. Photographer, Michael Locke. Our head coach is George Smart, and I'm your play-by-play announcer, the voice of the fightin' modernist, Tom Guile. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a non-profit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. George and I'll be back soon with another Sports as a Metaphor for Renovation edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.
Go Wildcats. Go Saints.
This metaphor is exhausting.